Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, Jeff.
Are you ready for some nerd ball?
All right, so I've started this tradition, and it's probably my least favorite tradition I've started, but I went all out this week, and this is the most lines of anything I've written, so apologies to everyone, but I've got spreadsheets on my laptop, my favorite stat defensive rebounding percentage. I've got Ken Pomeroy. I've got Jordan Sperber waiting there for me. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. In Pullman, we have a nerd who cares about analytics. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Did you know what song that was? Or did I butcher it enough that it wasn't apparent? Okay.
It's that Weezer song.
Yeah.
It is a Weezer song. Thank you, Kyle. Oh, spoiled the surprise.
Surprise.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to episode 11 of Podcast versus Everyone. Normally, this would have been an emergency episode, but it hit right when we were going to schedule anyway. So with me, as always, is Jeff Nusser, and a very special guest tonight is we've robbed him, taken him away from Cougar Football Saturdaycast. Of course, they weren't doing anything anyway. Kyle Sherwood.
Hey guys, I feel like you guys have been sitting in this nice hot tub for like 4 months, and I'm like gonna come over here, and when I sit down, the whole thing's gonna overflow, and it's gonna be really gross. But let's hope it feels good too.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Have we been doing this for 4 months? Jeez.
I don't know.
It's almost 3.
You guys are getting pruny.
I know.
Yeah.
Just little.
All right. So, the reason we have Kyle on, the reason why we're a little excited, the reason why I sang that ridiculous song, WSU has its basketball coach, and his name is Kyle Smith. That's the main reason we brought Kyle on, because he has the same initials.
We all know each other.
Yep. Every Kyle S knows every Kyle S. So we're looking for special insight. But this was obviously Klay Thompson's choice of coach. And I think we've all had the, 4 hours to absorb the information. And I think we might all be as excited about Klay about this. What are you thinking, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. Should we do the beer first before we get into too much coach talk?
Oh, shit. Yeah, I was so excited.
You were
about the
so
coach.
excited. We were just going to skip right to the coach talk.
All right. Well, fine. We'll talk about beer. What do we...
If I twist your arm, right?
Kyle, are you drinking something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not much of a beer drinker during the fall and the spring. Like you guys know me, I'm more of a it's got to be like real hot out to drink a beer. I'm a very much a summer guy, and the other 9 months out of the year, I'm more or less drinking brown liquor. So tonight I brought out the Basil Hayden, and yeah, made myself a little old fashioned here, but I brought the bottle downstairs with me, so I'll just keep filling it up with straight bourbon once I'm done with this.
And how would you rate that old-fashioned out of 5 nerdy-ass coaches?
Well, here's how I would label it. It's a mid-level bourbon that can actually that can perform as well as as a lot of the top tier bourbons that you're going to see on the top of your shelves. So I think that it's a bourbon that outperforms its price range. So I think it's very fitting for this evening.
Oh, very good. All right, Jeff, what are you drinking?
So tonight I'm drinking Slow Turbo Double IPA from Hoof Hearted Brewing. Hoof Hearted. Yeah.
Right. Long-time listeners will understand that. Right?
Long-time listeners from like 3 weeks ago will remember that. So Slow Turbo Double IPA. And I'm thinking, Slow Turbo is the is kind of what I'm hoping our offense will be like. I know Kyle Smith likes to play kind of slow, so I'm thinking slow but like turbocharged, kind of like Tony Bennett's team. So that's what I'm hoping for, is a little slow turbo action on the offense.
Cool. And what do you think of that beer?
Well, I just poured it, so hold on.
Oh, come on, new sir. We don't have time for this.
Sure you do. We got all night.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. That's it's really good, and I give it like 4.25 new coaches. What do we call it? What was the? I don't even remember what the rating system was.
It doesn't matter. It
Whatever.
Really, honestly, does not.
That was really good though.
Yeah.
So yeah, celebratory beer.
Yeah, I have 3 beers stacked up over here. One is my sidecar beer that I'll always crack later, but so I had a beer planned all week. It's a little bit of a downer. I'll go into that one first, and then I'll get into the beer that I got special for the hiring of Kyle Smith. So this week, kind of a very important kind of legend of the Seattle beer scene and the West Coast beer scene, like, suddenly died at the age of 45. Matt Bonney. He is well known for being a co-founder of Bottle Works. It's the first like beer only shop in Seattle, opened in 1999. And he brought a lot of Belgian beers in, and when there wasn't a lot of U.S. craft beer to be drinking. And then he helped found Brouwer's Cafe, which is a Belgian beer bar that's been in Seattle since 2006, I believe. So really, he started a lot of things, and he's been really influential throughout the West Coast, working with breweries and everything. He also, the last thing he did was open Toronado in Seattle, which is a famous beer bar in San Francisco and San Diego, and then so he started a Seattle one. And so he's just really influential. I had a chance to meet him once or twice at his bar, one time at a dinner for a beer called Three Mats, which was made with Fremont Brewing. The owner of Fremont Brewing is also named Matt, and then the lead barrel program guy is named Matt. And so with Matt Bonney, there was Three Mats. So he was just a great guy, and everything I've heard about him was great. So it was a big loss. So cheers to him. I am drinking Bottle Works 17th anniversary, made by Crooked Stave, which is a brewery out of Colorado. It's a golden sour ale. It's very nice. I'm drinking it out of a Brouwer's 12th anniversary glass. So I'm also very on brand there. Okay, so this beer is very good. It is 3 years old because I just got the 20th anniversary Bottle Works beer, but it tastes really nice, balanced acidity. It's not burning my esophagus. It's very good. A lot going on. I really enjoy it. So I'll give it 5 new Kyle Smiths out of 5 Kyle Smiths. And the other beer I have is we're excited about Nerd Ball, so I dug in my cellar to find one of the nerdiest beers I have. The nerdiest brewery that I know of is Bottle Logic in Anaheim. Jeff, I know you've been there. A lot of their stuff is based on video games or Dungeons and Dragons or science topics and math, and so they call their barrel aging program the Stasis Project. So there's just a lot of nerdy shit. This is one of their level 1 beers, that when they do the beer the first time, they call it level 1. It is an imperial red ale, which is an odd style to make, aged in I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't know, Kyle, if you've heard of this bourbon, Michter bourbon. Have you heard of that?
Michter? How do you spell that?
Michter.
No, I don't.
Yeah, so it's aged in those, which is kind of weird for them to call out the name of the bourbon straight on the barrel on the bottle. You usually have to get permission for that, so that's interesting. And then it's aged on cassia bark, and it's pretty interesting. So normally I wouldn't be down with throwing a beer like this into a barrel when you could just throw a stout or a barley wine. But actually, this is definitely right in on that barley wine area. Like, it is very deep, dark brown. The cassia bark gives it this nice kind of spice. Like, it's working very well. It's way better than I thought it was going to be. I picked this up randomly. I think I was in San Diego or something, and they had it on the shelf, and I was like, ooh, a Bottle Logic barrel-aged beer, because their barrel-aged program is pretty famous. So, and so I've had this for, I don't know, year and a half or so. I'm just sitting there waiting for tonight for our nerdy coach. So I'll give it 4.5 out of him. Or if we're just going integers, I'll go 4. Yeah, so that's what we're drinking. I have a lot to drink, so the end of this podcast should be a lot of fun.
I say the first time I heard you say refer to one of your beers as a sidecar on this podcast. By the way, big fan of the podcast, guys.
Thank you.
The first time I heard you say that you had a sidecar, I legitimately thought that you were referring to the Sierra Nevada sidecar beer.
Oh yeah, of course.
I saw that at the gas station like 2 weeks ago, and I legitimately, like I said, I'm not much of a beer drinker, and I picked it up, and it's been kind of a long running joke that literally every beer I buy, I send a picture to Craig just to make sure that I'm not buying something super dorky. Yeah. And but this one I saw in the gas station. I was like, oh my God, Craig likes gas station beer. And I literally I picked up a 6-pack of Sierra Nevada Sidecar. It was not great, but I definitely drank all 6 of them, and I questioned your judgment for like about 4 days before I realized what you were actually talking about.
Okay, so a funny quick story about gas station beer.
Oh yeah.
So okay, so the first time I had Bottle Logic beer, like Craig was talking about, was we took a family vacation to Disneyland, and the brewery is literally 2 miles from Disneyland, and so convinced my wife that we had to stop by there one night, and one of their their sort of one of their barrel aged beers is Dark Star November. That's what I had that night, and so I was at my went back to the hotel. Went across the street, there was so in California, they've got like liquor store / convenience store / ice cream store / whatever else, like all in the same place, right?
Yeah, you can sell booze anywhere in California.
Yeah. And so I go across the street to this.
I've heard California knows how to party.
Yeah. So I go across the street from our hotel to this place to get some late night ice cream for my wife. And I see they've got a selection of beer bottles, and I'm like, okay. So I start looking, and then I see they've got some Bottle Logic bottles, and I'm like, okay. So I take a picture and send them to Craig. I'm like, Craig, you want any of this? And he's like, they've got just like Bottle Logic bottles just hanging out in this liquor's convenience store. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, okay, so grab me one. So I grab him one of those. I grab one for me, take it up to the counter. Guy rings it up. And he goes, that'll be $65.38.
For how many beers?
2.
Damn.
Yeah, I remember I was like, oh shit, Jeff, by the way, those beers are really expensive.
I know. And so I'm like, well, fuck it. I'm on vacation. Who cares? So I'm like, so I just,
include the ride home.
Right. And so they were packed very neatly and very nicely. I think I wrapped them in, 2 pairs of socks. And
you burned the receipt before you got back to the hotel room.
Yeah. I made sure that, no. And if Sarah's listening to this, I definitely did not do that. But yeah, that was so the running joke between
just
Craig
jokes
and I
for the show, baby.
This was our the magic, what do we call it? The magic liquor store, or the magic convenience store, or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, that was, so Bottle Logic. Yeah, if your family drags you along to Disneyland, make sure to go to Bottle Logic. It's super yummy. And in fact, the bottle that I bought there, and this is a year and a half later now, I still have it. It's still hanging out, and I haven't drank it yet. I keep waiting for a time when Craig and I are hanging out and we can properly enjoy it. Maybe spring game. Maybe I'll bring it to the spring game.
Ooh, there you go. It does have purple on the label, purple and gold.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Yeah.
Disneyland's going to be serving beer in the new Star Wars land, and those will probably also cost $30 per glass. So,
Yeah.
And actually, Bottle Logic is brewing that beer.
really,
They brew a ton of beer for California Adventure. So whatever their flagship IPA, I don't know. Hold on just a sec, I can tell you. Recursion's their flagship IPA, and that's like all over California Adventure.
And if you get into that fancy restaurant that's in Disneyland, I don't remember what it's called.
Club 33.
Yeah, Club 33.
Yeah.
They have a bunch of like really fancy beer, and including a bunch of the high-end beer bottle. Like if you look at the Untapped check-ins at Club 33, it's just all this like crazy beer that even some of it I've never even drank. So like that's the only reason I've ever wanted to go into that.
We got our picture taken next to the entrance of Club 33 just because we were so proud that we found it.
Sarah, my wife, is determined to get into Club 33 someday. I'm like, okay, sure. Why not?
Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
We were down in Disney World 2017, Christmas 2017, so a little over a year ago, and we were in the Animal Kingdom where they have the Avatar land, and there was a like in one of the restaurants, like they have like their local craft brewery like has like 7 or 8 different. It's probably the same type of thing. It has like 7 or 8 different types of beer that they brew specifically for this Avatar land, and I ordered one of the IPAs, and the lady looked at me, she's like, just so you know, it's gonna look weird. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's I'm here with 2 children, and I haven't had a beer in 3 days, so whatever you can give me is gonna be fantastic. And so I get it, and it's bright green. It looked like ectoplasm from the Ghostbusters type thing, but it tasted exactly like your standard like Georgetown IPA. It was bright green. It was bright green. Nuts.
That would be so weird.
Yeah. It looked like I was drinking like a giant like a Slurpee or a milkshake or something. It was crazy.
Yeah,
it was good.
Just throw off your flavor, because
yeah. It wasn't St. Patrick's Day green. Like it legitimately looked like Slimer from the Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I can't remember what beer that is, but I've seen pictures of it that people have taken, and it looks like, yeah, exactly like you said, ectoplasm. Like I'm amazed that you could still pick it up, like, because the way you look at a beer could just have such an impact on what you think it's going to taste like.
No
like
doubt.
I said, I was carting 2 toddlers around Disney World for 3 days and hadn't had any alcohol. So literally any port in a storm at that point, you could have given me a glass of bleach and I would have put it down.
Speaking of glasses of bleach, we don't have to drink bleach anymore because we are now free of Ernie and moving on to a Kyle, which is going to be a winner no matter what, right?
I'm looking forward to it.
Man, yeah. I just obviously multiple reports that he's coming, and so I think it's safe to say it's happening. And if you have a subscription to the Athletic, I highly recommend you read an article called "Nerdball is Ushering in a New Era at Resurgent San Francisco," which will just kind of Jeff and I talk about a lot of numbers on here that come from Ken Palm and everything, but the stuff they're doing just goes above and beyond anything that we ever talk about. And it talks about how he started out with Randy Bennett, and they kind of were just Ken Palm nerds, and they kind of moved into just instituting more and more statistics, like where they're having they have stats around ball screen coverage, and they find out that their 5'11" guard is getting pushed aside on pick and rolls, and so they just, based on that, shifted him off the ball in those situations. That's crazy. Like I can't even imagine, like in the Ernie Kent era, anything like that, anything even close to that high-minded ever happening.
Yeah, I think if there's one thing we could be 100%, we were confident about a lot of things with Ernie Kent, but there is nothing I would be more confident in than the fact that Ernie would not even know that the word analytics is actually a word. or at the very least, if he did, he's like, what is that fancy? I go with my eyes, I mean, whatever it is, like, it's obviously a huge departure. And I think that's, you don't have to look very hard at numbers. So like you said, Craig, we talk about numbers a lot. And one of the things that we do a lot is we look at these statistical profiles that are on kenpom.com. And a lot of times what we do is we kind of look for trends. We look for consistencies. So like when we're looking at a coach, what are the areas that they are strong in, year after year after year, when the players change, when the teams they're playing change, when everything else is changing, what's the stuff that's constant? And, it's a lot of times pretty easy to tell who are the guys who are paying attention to what sort of produces the greatest value in terms of creating points and not creating points, right? Offensive and defensively. And, when you looked at Ernie's stuff, it was really clear. This is a guy who had a, concept in his head of how to play. And, there were a number of things that he did not emphasize that are pretty directly tied to point production, for a guy with such an offensive reputation. He really emphasized shooting, which is good, right? I mean, putting the ball in the basket's the most important thing, but really de-emphasized offensive rebounding, really didn't seem to care too much about turnovers. And those two things really, neuter your offensive efficiency, even if you're shooting well. So, it's just kind of obvious he wasn't paying, they just wasn't interested in that, which again, most coaches aren't, especially coaches that are, 60 plus. So here you got a guy who's 49, who has sort of worked at a number of places where you had to do it differently or do it, better than other people. He was started out at the University of San Diego, West Coast Conference guy, spent a year at Air Force with Joe Scott doing the Princeton thing out there. Spent a bunch of years under Randy Bennett at St. Mary's, before heading out to Columbia in the Ivy League. Again, Columbia has not ever been known as an Ivy League power, and then coming back out to San Francisco, which has been, frankly, pretty bad, for the last, 20 or so years, and has been better than everybody else that's been there in recent history by doing what he does. So, he kind of checks all the boxes in terms of a guy that we're looking for that is looking for an edge in some way. And it's kind of exactly what you and I have been advocating for, which is, you need to do something different at Wazoo. You need to, whether it's Tony Bennett and Dick Bennett, that's a different thing. Obviously, I don't think Dick Bennett's ever paid attention to an analytics report. But you better know what you want to do, and you better have an edge against the other teams that have maybe more traditional advantages. And so far, what I've seen from the guy, especially if you read that athletic piece that Craig referenced, really makes you think that this is a guy who I don't know if he'll be successful, but what I do know is his process sounds a hell of a lot better than Ernie's.
There's something very refreshing about just an absolutely relentless commitment to math. Like what you said, it sounds like everything that Ernie did. Like, I'm pretty sure the three of us who don't know that much about basketball, or as much as a college coach should, could probably pick up what Ernie runs in a practice within maybe a half an hour, just because he's not really running anything different than what you would see at a high school or anything like that. It's just with more talent. And you read that athletic article where they're talking about literally someone is watching all 10 players on both sides of the ball, literally on every single play, and they keep stats off ball, on ball, literally in practice, so they can make sure that they have the best configurations to go come game time, and then they start working game time stats in slowly and afterwards. It literally sounds like a KenPom experiment on the court. And I'm thrilled to be part of it. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, you just look at his profile in 3 years at San Francisco. First I have to point out that when we were drinking and celebrating on the Ernie pod, I call it the Ernie pod, but the emergency Ernie Got Fired podcast, I was reminded by someone that I just said, I just want a fucking nerd. And we definitely got a fucking nerd. It's a nerd to the core. if you read that Athletic article, it's just like this is some crazy shit that I didn't even know that teams did, honestly. But there's a few things that just stick out to me, and the things that get you, that things that can transition from a small conference to a big conference. That's defensive rebounding. He clearly is committed to that. They rate very well in that. And then they limit the number of 3-point attempts, period, which that keeps you out of that 3-point lottery. That's usually teams that limit 3-point attempts also are good at defending 3-pointers. Those usually go together. So as more teams are shooting more threes, that's a great thing to have, and you're clearing out the rebounds on the misses. Those are they've just done a good job shooting wise. Obviously, they don't force turnovers. I mean, it's very packish defensive profile. Obviously, I don't know what defense he runs, but obviously it's man to man, and he doesn't rely on blocks. He doesn't rely on steals. The defenses have been pretty good this year. Was the worst defense he's had, but also the best offense. And they really limited turnovers more this year. Shot the ball a little better. So I'm curious to see it. One thing that excites me is he seems to be a coach that'll be willing to adapt, and he'll be willing. He's got some principles, obviously, but he's looking at numbers and he's willing to adapt, and maybe that's why his defense has stayed. You have the same peripherals, but now his offense has improved. So maybe we'll see things like that at WSU. It's not just going to be like the same old shit every night over and over again that doesn't work. Like you can believe that he might actually figure something out once in a while.
One of the things that I love to see in a coach is when there's like this synergy between their defensive and offensive philosophies. And kind of what I mean by that is, okay, so if you value one thing on one end, then you probably should be valuing the same thing on the other end, right? So something like, for example, 3-point shooting, right? So his 3-point, on offense, they shoot a lot of threes, and that's something that they've just have done. They a little bit less this year, but for the previous, the 5-6 years before that, they shot a pretty high percentage of threes as a ratio of their overall field goal attempts. Well, then on defense, though, so if on offense you think, and this was always sort of like the thing with Ernie that always blew my mind. It's like, okay, so if on offense you feel like the 3-point shot is your best weapon, right? Like this is your shot, this is your thing that is that's so valuable that you're going to win games this way. Well, if you're on defense, why would you let the other team also shoot a million threes, right? Like, why wouldn't you gear your defense to stop that? And that's what Kyle Smith does. His defense over the years has suppressed 3-point attempts, except for like his last year at Columbia. The opponents took a ton of threes. But other than that, he's never in his career outside of that one season has never ranked below 55th in 3-point attempt percentage, which is just the ratio of 3-pointers to field goal attempts. So, it's like if you're doing it on one end, you should do it on the other. And so it's to me that says a lot about the messaging you're sending your team, right? Which is, hey, this is what we do. We're going to shoot threes. Yeah. And because it's such a weapon for us, we're going to make sure the other team doesn't go off from 3-point range. And that kind of thing just sort of, if it makes sense to me, I assume it makes sense to a player. Where it's like, if you're trying to communicate that to a player, and that's what I see in that stuff. I know we're talking about this story from the Athletic a lot, part of it because, it's kind of all we have to go on at the moment. But, one thing I take away from that is that, so when they watch the video of practice and they score things up. So one of the things they do is they score like this. They go, okay, so if you make an assist in practice, you get +4 points for you as a person. If you make a turnover, you get -6. So it's like these two things are not equal, right? So like if you're making a pass in practice and you know that you're going to be held accountable to the result of that pass, okay, great. An assist is nice, but a turnover is worse. And the math bears that out, right? Any possession that ends in a turnover is just a 0. I mean, there's no chance of a positive outcome. And if it's an a live ball turnover, that's even worse, right? Because it goes back the other way. So I'm like, yeah, like this is how you send the message to your team. This is what we value. This is what's important. And just from looking at these kinds of things and kind of hearing these kinds of things, he seems like a guy who's really good at messaging what's important to him, to his players. And to me, that is such a difference from, and I know we're going to probably keep comparing to what we had before, but that is such a difference. And to me as a coach, that's the thing that every coach should sort of be measured on is, how well do you communicate to your team what you want out of them, and how well do they do that?
Stack ranking players on after every practice. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's the Microsoft way. All of a sudden.
Do you imagine like this little leaderboard in the locker room with like a point total, and you come in and there you are, who's at the top?
Dude, that's a great, like, honestly though, how do you get kids to practice hard? We can make every practice a competition. There's different ways to do it. Some coaches resort to yelling at them and telling them to fix it. But if you're just like, well, we know because we had one guy staring at you the whole time, and he gave you had 8 points less than the other guy. That's very interesting. It's obviously pretty innovative. And it's great. Another thing I wanted to look at with him is his recruiting, because I know we've talked about a lot of how it's obviously it's no secret that it's tough to get players to come to Pullman. So you have to be creative. Typically our good coaches have been creative, and it looks like that there's players on his roster from Belarus, from Estonia, from Tacoma, from Helsinki, Melbourne, Australia,
and Seattle.
He
has as many recruits from Seattle as Ernie ever had.
It's via Central Washington, so
that's true.
Interesting, but
that's true.
Actually, the kid from Tacoma apparently went to Rainier Beach, so I don't know what's going on there, but.
Well, that's what happens. That's how it works. That's how it works in Washington. If you can play, you go to Beach or Garfield.
You're taking my kids from Tacoma?
That's right.
From the rich
now that
fertile land.
Now that you're
Tacoma?
official 253.
Yeah, I'm all over Tacoma now. But yeah,
hey Kyle, how would you feel if someone took your kids from the 425?
I mean, I still claim Bellingham, so yeah. Yes.
The 360.
Yeah, I hate Linden and Ferndale way more than I hate anybody around here, so we're good.
I don't know if I can even name the high schools in Tacoma. My daughter is. I've lived here for a year and a half, and my daughter is
ready for
15,
high school.
15 months old. So
she'd probably go to Foss.
The one I know. Well, the one actually. I lied. The one that's closest is Wilson, but we are right on the border of Stadium. And obviously we would love to have her go to the 10 Things I Hate About You school. So
yeah, you can't go wrong there.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyways, recruiting, just going deep into Tacoma. It's a tough place. But anyway, so obviously Helsinki and like Finland, Belarus, the classic basketball havens. Obviously Australia is a place that WSU has tapped to great success in the past. So I don't know. I just keep piling on the good stuff. Like obviously he's not just going to try to go after the same recruiting pool that everyone else is doing.
Kyle, are you sold on the idea that you need to be able to recruit internationally? You need to be able to, kind of look for these like little, cracks around the globe to try and supplement talent here. Are you buying the idea that he can use his analytics advantage to, land Pac-12 recruits? I mean, it's one thing to do that at Columbia and San Francisco. I think it's another thing to do it in the Pac-12.
I think it certainly helps. I mean, anything you can do to widen your base. I mean, you see some of these smaller schools that just have a proven track record of just getting a whole bunch of guys that are 6'9" and hoping that things work out for the best, and sometimes they do. But yeah, as far as I would hope that this is a positive. I mean, if he worked for Randy Bennett, who it sounds like he had a hand in, or he was at least around when they picked up Patty Mills and what was the other guy that was at St. Mary's that
Dellavedova. Yeah, Matthew Dellavedova.
Yeah, so it sounds like he was in on that. So I mean, if he's got a Rolodex, do people still have Rolodexes in 2019?
Ernie Kemp probably does.
I feel like a coach has a Rolodex. Coaches, they don't
that seems like a very coach
cell phones.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly helps to be able to call anywhere in the world, and it sounds like, I mean, WSU's recruiting budget isn't what Kentucky's is, but I mean, it's certainly probably higher than what USF's is, and so I mean, so I would say that you take what he has now and it amplifies it a little bit, and so I think I would hope that with the way that his system works, that there shouldn't be any sort of limitations on what he should be able to find.
I would love to see the Australia thing get started up again. I don't know if, I don't know what he's planning on doing with his assistants. I think there was a report out there sort of right away that one of his assistants would be expected to take over at San Francisco, presuming he's hired here. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to me to see, where he goes with that. Like I said, it's one thing to, recruit to Columbia. It's one thing to recruit to San Francisco. And you can be better than most of the teams in your league, in both of those leagues, in both the Ivy and the WCC. You can be better than the vast majority of the teams in that league just by, doing a little bit better. Recruiting wise, you don't necessarily have to have great athletes. You don't necessarily have to, cover all that. Columbia, if you're Columbia in the Ivy League, Yale's got some pretty okay athletes. Harvard's got some pretty okay athletes. But if you're trying to separate yourselves from Penn or Brown, it doesn't take a whole lot to do that. And then, San Francisco, same deal. I mean, you've got St. Mary's and Gonzaga, and obviously that's tough. And, and then you got to compete with BYU's, 26-year-olds. But, to separate yourself from some of the other teams in that conference, your San Diego's or whatever, or Loyola's, it's like, you just sort of have to find an edge in order to do that. And doesn't have to be, a huge athletic edge. Pac-12 sort of a different animal in that regard. And I know that we've obviously seen that you can do it with overlooked guys. I mean, obviously our greatest run in program history, happened with guys that, turned out to not be bad players, obviously, but at the same time were guys that were not, super highly valued by other programs. So I don't know, it's going to be really interesting to me to see how he goes about trying to stock the roster. Going to be interesting to me also to kind of see, who sticks around and who transfers. I know that, it's been reported that both Pollard and Skaggs have been put in the portal, which is sort of a 1 foot out the door thing. If I were to guess, I would guess Skaggs goes and Pollard stays. But that's just sort of my guess.
And the other thing we got to remember is that they were 63rd nationally this year.
Yeah.
So if they were 63rd nationally, that puts them probably about 4th place in the Pac-12 this year.
Roughly. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we would throw him a parade. Literally, there would be a parade down Main Street. Cougar Country would come back into business, and they would chuck cheeseburgers out, and everything would be happy. Everyone would be thrilled with being the 63rd best team in the country.
So 63rd is right about the ballpark of Arizona State and Colorado. And the only other two teams in the Pac-12 that's behind would be Oregon and Washington. So in other words, imagine, Oregon, Washington, and then in sort of a second tier, you've got Colorado, Arizona State, and USF, and then everybody else. And oh, by the way, in case you didn't know this, Washington State ranked 207th. And have never ranked above yet. Yeah, they've never ranked above 186th in Ernie's 5 years. So how about that?
Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
I'm just, it's the funny thing is Smith has coached at an Ivy League school, which is a one big conference, and he's coached at the West Coast Conference at a lower level. Like it's when you get out of the St. Mary's and Gonzaga and BYU, it's a lot of teams that typically belong in a one bid conference. But he has only since his first 3 years at Columbia, has never had a worse team than any of the other teams that Ernie has had at a Pac-12 school. So I think that's encouraging to know that we can probably expect some improvement right away, which in this horrible conference, which is not going to get any better next year, that's pretty encouraging. If they can pop up to like 120, 140, like suddenly you're winning like 8 conference games. Like it's and then if you can work yourself into a top 100 team, the way the Pac-12 is going right now, you're in there, you're in the mix to get a bid to the tournament. ASU was in the net rankings and in the KenPom rankings was in like the 60s, and they got a bid to the tournament. I think largely on the reputation, the historical reputation of the Pac-12. Or Pac-10, Pac-12. So it's nice to know that like it's very unlikely that they're going to get worse, and it's very likely that they're going to get better, just for the fact that the coach is just so much better coach. The same players being coached by him will be better. And he's still. It's nice that Chun turned this around pretty quickly, because there's still an opportunity, and there's open spots to add guys that maybe fit Smith a little better.
Yeah, and there will probably be at least a couple guys that go. Like Absolutely. I said, I would not be shocked if Skaggs. In fact, I would be surprised if Skaggs stays. And if that happens, if he goes, then you've got, at least a couple spots that are just open, and that doesn't even account for anybody else who might transfer. So, yeah, he'll have a chance to fill it. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did a Dick Bennett type bump, in the first year. Paul Graham's last year, they were 208th. And then Dick Bennett's first year, they were 126th. They went from 2 wins to 7 wins in the Pac-10, 7 wins overall to 13 wins overall, just a shade under 500. So, yeah, I mean, that's the kind of bump I'd be looking for, something like, 6, 7, 8 wins next year, and something like, 13 to 15 wins overall. I think that's the sort of bump I'm looking for.
It's actually kind of alarming how many seniors are on the roster next year, considering how many players I don't know who are on the roster this year.
It's because they're all junior college transfers.
Yeah, I could probably name 4 players off the top of my head if you didn't let me look at the internet or anything like that. But now, just looking at the roster right now, I'm just seeing junior. They're all going to be senior next year. So. That's got to also be attractive to him, that he's probably going to have 5 or 6 roster spots open up at the end of the year too.
Absolutely, that's huge. That's the one thing we can thank Ernie for, is that he did a terrible time bringing in freshman scholarship players and keeping them. So the roster's full of recent junior college transfers that are ready to leave pretty soon. So that's pretty nice. I know Jeff and I and Kyle, we've talked about that throughout the season. Like, if someone else comes in, the good thing is that he just keeps bringing in his JUCO transfers, and they're going to leave. So no one's going to be saddled with his shitty players although he's, there's obviously, a couple solid young pieces in there, and Ellaby and Kuntz definitely has potential there. But there's obviously more that needs to be added. So we've obviously just heaped on some praise and happiness. I mean, when you come from the depths of sorrow that we've been in, I know the 3 of us are definitely the biggest basketball nerds at Coug Center, and we've all been deeply affected by having shitty basketball. But now suddenly, like, I want to write something. I want to write something about this. It's exciting. I was excited to hop on this podcast. I grabbed a shit ton of beer and I was like, let's go. But if there's anything that you might be reticent about, like, is there something you look at what he's doing? Yeah, sure. He could, you're thinking immediately, pop up to 120, but, Ken Bone had a bunch of teams in the top 100. Ken Bone didn't really bottom out to the depths of Ernie level until his last year. Is there any concern that Do you think that Kyle Smith is the type of guy that can, take us to the NCAA tournament?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's been such a rare occurrence, throughout our history, and so to say that this guy can take us there, I mean, I really have no idea. He hasn't done it yet at any program he's been at. Columbia didn't do it, and USF didn't do it. So, and in fact, they had a, if someone wanted to be sort of, negative about it, you could look at the way the year ended. I think they lost their last 4 games and crashed out of the WCC tournament to Pepperdine of all teams, to the fighting Lorenzo, Romar, Ken Bone, Curtis Allens. So, I mean, that's sort of like, so yeah, I mean, it definitely is sort of a, we are just so glad to have anything other than Ernie, and definitely things that we like to see philosophically and process wise, but, definitely questions about, what his ceiling is, definitely questions about, and I think a lot of that's tied to talent, kind of what I said before about, it's one thing to look for an edge when, the teams in your league are real bad. It's another thing to look for an edge when you're in a major conference, and I know that the Pac-12 has not been good, but it's not going to stay down forever. And, UCLA is going to go hire. Well, I mean, I guess I'm assuming they're going to hire a good coach, but I guess they could always screw that up. But it's just like, I mean, they're not going to be, these teams are not going to be down forever. Washington just keeps adding like 4- and 5-star guys, whether through traditional recruiting or transfers. So, it's I mean, this is a thing where, I'm curious to see how it plays out, but, like I said, it's the big thing for me is just seeing that the indicators are there, I think, for what you need to do. Whether he can pull it off, I don't know.
Yeah, my expectations for WSU basketball have never been super high. So, like, I mean, that's the thing, and I mean that sincerely, and I mean it nicely. Like, the first 3 or 4 years of Ken Bone basketball, when we were hovering around 100th, or there was the one nice year that we had with Clay when we were at when we went to the Final Four of the NIT. But the other years we were hovering, right around the 100 spot in Ken Palm. Like, yeah, we're Washington State. This is where we're supposed to be. This is actually probably a pretty good year for us. And then we kind of bottomed out, and things went sour, and then obviously Ken Bone needed to go. But I mean, that's always kind of where I've thought we should be. And when people say that we don't have the facilities to can compete with the big boys or the charter flights and things like that, I'm like, okay, well, let's just try and make some baby steps here with our coaches until we can get some of those things squared away. And so my expectations remain very low, but that also means, but I'm also very inspired by what I've read, where with the relentless pursuit of improvement, it sounds like what their team wants to do, in each and every practice, and that's really what I kind of want to see here over the next year. I absolutely think that he can make a tournament with Wazoo. I mean, if you keep a team hovering around the 70s, eventually they're going to break a 35 and make it into the tournament. So I don't see any reason why he couldn't do that. So yeah, I mean, there's not really a lot that alarms me on this specifically, because it seems like every program that he has run has been with a lot of care and a lot of alarm, and so that's very reassuring. And this hire looks like it was taken with a lot of thought. So no, I don't think there's anything I should really be upset about here or worried about. I think we're definitely going to be better. It's just a matter of how much we're going to be better, and this has got to be a long-term look at an improvement, rather than are we going to be into the tournament by 2020 or 2021 or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it, because we hear, we've seen, people say, oh, the roster is ready for, even Chun says the roster could be better. Obviously, the roster could have been, with the current roster, with the roster last year with Franks and Ellaby and stuff, like, I think a better coach could have taken them, to at least be a hell of a lot better than they were, not 207th on Ken Palm or whatever. But, and so, that's the encouraging part. Yeah, that's why we're so excited. that's what we wanted. We wanted something different. We wanted someone who's moneyballing it up, and he's doing that. He's recruiting from weird places. He's taking an odd approach from a lot of coaches, and I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited to see some like strict man-to-man defense and all of that. And I just I'm really looking forward now to basketball. And that begs the question: do you think this hire? I have this kind of feeling that Pat Chun may have said, Clay, will you say something about Kyle Smith so that people know who the hell he is? Because do you think this hire will bring excitement and attendance and support back for WSU basketball immediately, or will it take some wins, or what are we thinking?
No, I don't think it brings anything back immediately. I think the only thing that would, you know what? I'm not even going to say that. I'm not sure there's anything that could bring excitement back immediately. Basketball is not football. And so, when you go hire a Mike Leach and everybody, lose their shit and, it's like he's excited about that, that's, football is just a different beast. I don't know that I think our fan base cares about basketball in the sense that they want it to not be embarrassing, which I think is a pretty reasonable expectation. But, I don't know that anybody pays that close of attention. I mean, if we just go on like just sort of this very simple metric, like when I remember when Mike Leach was hired, the kind of traffic we did on the website when it was like, oh my God, we got Mike Leach. And we basically sort of blew up the network. Like it was like we were, so many people were flocking to the site because we hired Mike Leach. There's there's a lot of traffic tonight, relatively speaking, but at the same time, it's nothing near what we saw for that. So I think part of that is, it's a guy nobody's ever heard of, but I think part of that also is just that, with basketball, I think a lot of times fans are just sort of like, well, show me, give me something interesting to look at. And honestly, I feel like that sort of was the biggest sin with, Bone and Ernie both. The losing's terrible or whatever, but the one thing you absolutely cannot be in basketball is, for a fan base that's definitely basketball second behind football, you can't be uninteresting. You got to be interesting in some way. You got to give the fans something to hang their hat on, something to be excited about. And I don't think that happens until until you show them something. Basketball is very much, I think, for our fans, a show me sport. If you show me something, then I'll be excited. And I really, look, it's not like we hired Dick frickin' Bennett, and it's not like all of a sudden Beasley was being sold out. Dick Bennett was only, however many years removed from a Final Four appearance. So you hired a guy like that, and the place wasn't really packed. Craig, you were a student at that time. Place wasn't really packed out until, they beat Gonzaga in Tony's first year. And all of a sudden everybody starts losing their shit and realizes like, hey, wait a minute, we might, really be good. That's when the thing turned the corner. So it's a very long answer just to say, I don't think this is going to move the needle much. Beginning of the year now, if they come out, they look good, they beat a bunch of teams, maybe they pick up a win. Obviously we don't know what their schedule looks like next year because they put together these, they're non-conference schedules in the off season, but if they come out and maybe get a decent win and don't suffer any embarrassing losses, people might start to pay attention a little bit.
If we go by the number of tickets sold in the Sherwood household over the last 4 years, and then compare it to the number of tickets that will probably be sold next year in the Sherwood household, and extrapolate that over the entire fan base, we will likely sell around 4 million more tickets. So that is the metric I'm going to hold Pat Chun to, and anything less will be a failure.
Yes, please. We are moving all of the games to CenturyLink Field, and we will be selling 68,000. Well, actually, if you put a basketball court in there, you could probably sell 80,000 seats, and we're going to sell it out every game. But yeah, I honestly, on that point, Kyle, like for me, I'm thinking, I mean, for the calf ranking too, but I just to show, just kind of show a support that I approve of this hire. I'm already thinking I'm gonna buy season tickets for the basketball team, even if I only go to a couple games. But just to, I believe in this hire, and I want to support it. I have a certain donation level I'm at, so me like adding a donation is just gonna get me to that point anyway. So, but I think like, buying basketball tickets is a good way to show support, and I'm definitely going to do that. And so between me and Kyle, like obviously millions more tickets will be sold.
Literally millions.
Literally millions.
Anything less is a failure, Pat.
Anything less. If there are not 5 million, or if there are not 4, well, actually to say, if there are not 4 million basketball tickets sold next year, we hold you personally accountable, Pat Chun.
Yeah, and we will demand your resignation.
But seriously though, like with Pat Chun, like how, I mean, obviously without knowing much about the details of this, I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty impressed. I mean, this is a guy who has been available since Ernie was fired. So obviously he did some kind of due diligence to land at this point. I don't know. Coug Fan reported that they were using a search firm. I have no idea how much truth there is to that, but, to take, almost 2 weeks, which, is not a super long time. So but it's also not a super quick turnaround. I mean, these things can, drag on and on, especially if you're, waiting out and holding out hope for somebody's in the tournament. I know a guy who, I was advocating for was Russell Turner, from UC Irvine. But it's just like, I don't know. I'm pretty impressed with how the process went down. Really no names leaked out. Landed on a guy who I think, really checks off all the boxes of what he said he was looking for. And, obviously I think part of that depends on the salary. So once we find out how much he's being paid, I mean, if he's making $2 million, I think I'm probably going to be less impressed, but at the same time, just sort of the process seems like, about right. It took about 2 weeks to find the guy, found a guy who checked all the boxes you said publicly you wanted. I don't know, like that. I mean, obviously it's sort of a results-based thing in the end, depending on how it turns out, but the process to me seemed to be a pretty good one.
So yeah, if you look at the timeline of when Ken Bone was hired and fired, so he was introduced to WSU on April 8th, which would be roughly 10 days from now.
Right.
Or what day is it? I don't even fucking know what day it is.
That's close enough.
I just need to know which day of the week it is. That's the only thing that matters
Tuesday.
to me. Thank you. Well, I knew that. Maybe. But then he was fired on March 18th. So, and then when was Ernie hired? One man search committee.
I think it was about 3. There was about 3 weeks. Yeah, he was hired right before the Final Four.
Yeah, it took about 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's. Oh yeah, so March 31st. Yeah, so that would be a couple days before the Final Four. Yeah. But yeah, I do remember we did have a lot more time, I feel like, to ponder about basketball coaches, but I guess it was about the same amount of time.
Not only did we have time to ponder, but we all just knew it was Ernie. So all we kept doing was like throwing out any name we could possibly think of.
I'll just say this, Kyle, you were the one who knew it was Ernie. Like, okay, so like to pull back the curtain for just a sec on like our Coug Center Slack chats, like Craig and I and pretty much everybody else, we were like, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's Leon Rice, right? Leon Rice was the guy we all wanted, all this stuff. And you kept saying over and over and over, it's Ernie. It's going to be Ernie. It's going to be Ernie. And every time something came up, you're like, it'll probably be Ernie. So go ahead and gloat for a moment about how we all knew, you knew it was going to be Ernie.
I didn't want Ernie any more than any of the rest of you. There's no gloating to do. The only gloating I will do is along with the two of you that we knew that was a disaster from the moment it happened, and Moose was riding high off of the Leach hire and just did whatever he wanted to do. We knew from January that he was going to hire Ernie. He doesn't have he didn't have any interest in doing anything else, and it made it even worse when we found out how much Ernie was getting paid, and we realized, oh wow, we could have legitimately bought 50 other coaches with that amount of money. So it was the laziest hire in the history of college sports. I'm gonna put it out there. I'm gonna be that I'm gonna be that over dramatic about it. No, I will not. I'm just happy it's over. It was awful. And to just counterbalance that, I mean, Chun knew that he's not going to hire a football coach when he's at Washington State University. So this is probably his highest profile hire that he's going to have while he's here. And and the way that his trajectory is going, he's probably not long for Washington State University. So this is his chance to make a difference on one of the revenue sports. And it seems very deliberate how he was able to kind of play against pretty much every trope that we've ever thought that we were going to have with Washington State University. Like, nobody thought that we were going to fire Ernie this year. And then when we found out that we fired Ernie, nobody thought they were going to pay him the entire amount of money that he was owed. And then when we found out, now, like, he more or less, the amount of time that it's taken him to find his coach, it pretty much seems like he got his first choice, and he wasn't being strung along by Leon Rice before we finally settled on a guy who'd been out of coaching for 5 years. So, I mean, I don't know. I've just been so impressed by everything that he's done here over the last year, and how much better the athletic department has been run over the last year on every level. And so when it came time to hire a coach, like, I had every confidence in the world that he was going to get the guy that he wanted, and it sounds like this is the guy he wanted. And after reading about him, I'm super excited for Cougar basketball.
I just wanted to add that Kyle mostly should brag about that failure to launch meme.
Yeah, that too.
That our Facebook readers and many of our website commenters did not like.
We took so much shit for that. I took so much shit for that.
That was kind of a wake up moment for me. I was like, wait, other people think this is better than we do. Like, and I don't want to gloat.
Elite Eights. He went to 2 Elite Eights.
I don't want to gloat too much about how much smarter we are than all of y'all. but we
called it.
If you could see, like, it's not even what we wrote on the website, and not even the failure to launch thing. That was definitely, like, we all thought it was funny because we're like, yeah, that makes sense. But, like, we were just like, this is a fucking disaster, especially when it was like 1.4 million 5-year rollover contract. Fucking
he got a rollover after going 1-17 in conference.
Yes, he did.
Yes, the first, yeah. Oh my God. And we don't know about Kyle Smith's contract, whatever, but I mean, it's probably going to be roughly similar. I actually, he's never been to a tournament or anything, so I don't know how much we have to pay him. But this is like, fuck, man, this is exactly the goddamn type of hire that I wanted. Like, this is amazing. Like, I've almost finished this 11% Imperial right now, so I'm getting, like, really fired up now. That's why, like, I hadn't even thought about renewing my season tickets, and then, like, in the middle of Kyle talking about that, I was like, oh fuck yeah, I'm just getting basketball season tickets now. Honestly, if we could buy basketball season tickets for next year right now, which you can't, I'd be like on there right now, credit card out, like, let's fucking do it, let's do this. But come on, Sean, like, make it available. You'd have one.
He's gonna have to figure that out between now and the announcement.
Yeah, seriously, like, make it available. Like, remember we had the basketball fund to try to keep Tony.
Oh my God!
We fucking collected $1 million in, like, no time. Like, just so we could fly some charter jets and give Tony a little extra money. We were paying Tony like $1 million by the end, by the way. And Paul Wolf at the time. Or built what? Yeah, Paul Wolf at the time was making $600,000, and our best
Tony was our first $1 million coach.
Tony was our first $1 million coach.
Not even Mike Price. Not even the guy who took us to 2 Rose Bowls. Tony Bennett.
Yep.
Tony Bennett of.
But yeah, I think that shows that if we have success, WSU can absolutely be a basketball school. If we have success, like, people will go apeshit over it, and Beasley, when the team is going good, is an insanely awesome place, and I just hope that we even just get it to the point where, like, because even the crowds when Bone had him in the CBI were pretty damn good, and people were fired up. So, like, just give us anything that is relevant in any sort of way, and like people will latch on it. There's like the students want to go to the games if they're gonna be fun, like and then the atmosphere is there, and then if we know the atmosphere is gonna be fun, that's gonna make other people want to go more. So it's just, I'm hoping that this is as exciting as it is right now. I'm hoping all this shit, because I'm thinking how much well, it's pretty, like, so I remember when I know you and Jeff and I, we were just when Brad Stevens was at Butler, just massive crush on Brad Stevens. Like, oh my God, this is
unhealthy.
And
I'm an Indiana fan, so I don't really care for Butler. we always kind of hoped that we always hoped that Stevens would eventually find his way to IU, and then he went to the Celtics. So
he might.
Yeah, yeah, they still might think he might still come back. That's
going real great
still
in Boston these days.
If I was him, I would get the fuck out of the NBA.
It's still very, very much a meme. We're tied up with RFC right now, but yeah, that is still very much a thing. That everyone thinks that Stevens is coming home, even though IU is not home. But anyway, I'm sorry, Brad Stevens.
Right. Well, no. Anyway, so when I was at my last job, I remember right when I got hired, there was this picture of Brad Stevens like collapsing to the ground and like screaming, and that was my that was my short-lived Twitter avatar, because it was just like my most favorite picture ever. and my I remember my new boss was like, so I don't think you should have like a random basketball coach as you're screaming into oblivion as your Twitter avatar. And I'm like, that was so sad. I was like, I want this to be my Twitter avatar forever. And I don't even know if I can find the picture again, but it was like hilarious, because I had just like, I remember when it was during or after one of their Final Four runs, and he talked to me. There was this article about him. After every game, he opens up his laptop and goes to kenpom.com. And I would just be like, oh my God, that's so amazing. But I'm going to say, like, right now, you can absolutely expect us to write more about basketball next year, because just knowing that the coach is using analytics, like, knows that what I'm writing about is like relevant. And like with Ernie, there was like, what do you read about? Like, he runs a fucking, like, there's no discernible offense. There's no discernible defensive philosophy. It was just a nightmare. But here it's just going to be like, this is what we do. Like, this is what we do. And even if it's not a specific style on the court, analytics is what we do. And honestly, as a nerd like I am, and we all are, that's just fucking amazing. Like, it's so great. Like, I'm so excited. The funny thing is, like, I wasn't even thinking about Kyle Smith, because I wasn't thinking it would be a guy that they would go after. Like, Jeff, like, was Kyle Smith on your mind?
Well, he was a guy who came up on a lot of lists. And so I know, like, when we wrote our, search firm thing, just, very tongue in cheek, but, he was a guy whose name came up, and we didn't write about him because I think we were sort of trying to focus on, kind of off the radar type guys, or guys who made a lot of sense. I mean, Russell Turner was a guy who was, very much on the radar, but, made a lot of sense for the reasons that, Pat Chun said. Kyle Smith wasn't a guy who sort of jumped off the page immediately to me. Obviously I'd seen his name, hadn't really looked too closely at him. And in fact, when he was hired, my first thought was, okay, I guess, just my first thought was, this is really underwhelming. And not that I expected to be, overwhelmed. by the guy who was eventually hired. But this was one where I kind of thought, okay, all right, that's fine. He got some, moderate success in San Francisco. That's nice, whatever. And then again, the more I dug into it, the more I was just like, oh, all right. Okay, cool. Like, okay. And then, we keep talking about that athletic article, but that is sort of the thing where you go, oh, okay, and it all of a sudden starts to make a lot more sense. So, yeah, I mean, he was on the radar in the sense that, his name had sort of been thrown out there in the, particularly from the national guys, because, they follow the same kind of formula. They look for, okay, who's worked in a mid-major, who's reasonably successful in the region, and so guys like him and, the other Smith, I'm totally blanking on his name, but, out of Utah, Craig Smith. Yes, Craig Smith. How could I forget?
Yeah, Thank you. Come on.
Oh, it's terrible. I'm ashamed now. So Craig Smith at Utah State, they just start throwing out names of, guys who were successful at mid majors. And I mean, obviously, with, Leon Rice, we did the same thing 5 years ago. So, that's kind of the tried and true formula. So I didn't really pay a ton of attention to it. And I didn't really look that closely at Kyle Smith because, like I said, I was kind of, just for my own, shits and giggles, I was like, I'm going to look for guys who are maybe off the beaten path, something, kind of fun to write about that's different. So sort of, again, pulling back the curtain a little bit, Craig and I write about things that we enjoy writing about. So we're going to write about things when it's like, yeah, this is interesting to us. So for me, it was interesting to say, okay, who are some names that I could maybe pull out that, might be a little bit different.
Well, let me qualify that.
Yeah.
Kyle and I write whenever we feel like it. Jeff does a lot of the dirty work where he's just like, I feel like I have to write about this. Sherwood and I are just like, we're almost emeritus at this point, but like we're just like, but now I'm like, you've drawn me back in, Patron. You've drawn me back in. I might have to make time for this now.
But this is all like so much better when it's interesting, right? Like that's like ultimately that's what it's all about. And that's why we do what we do. I mean, none of us is getting rich here. So, we like doing things that are
Jeff,
interesting.
You're not getting rich?
No, I'm not.
Oh, he hasn't been coming to the rich guy meetings.
Oh my God.
Shit. Did I miss my invitation to actually throw it away with the junk mail?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've
sent it to the wrong Skype.
I mean, the last Kook Center get together was on a yacht. On Kyle's yacht.
Yeah.
It was either my yacht or Kyle's
Wait,
yacht.
Kyle has a yacht?
Well, a yacht I made, I bought specifically through paying through with clicks. So yes, I don't have that many clicks, so those are some expensive ass clips.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you to all who, when you click on the link, you pay us $500. I don't know why you do that, but I appreciate it. And thank you for directing it to Kyle and I. Sorry, Jeff. I don't know. But anyways, what were you saying about not getting rich after this?
Yes.
I don't even remember. I just basically saying like this is a lot more fun when it's interesting, and the things are about to get interesting again, and that's I feel about this now in a way that I never felt about Ernie. Even though Kyle Smith wasn't a guy who was on my radar, it's a guy who the deeper I look into him, the more I'm like, yeah, I can buy this. I can get into this. And again, who knows if it works out? I mean, nobody does, but you try to make decisions based on process. And I'm impressed that, Pat Chen seems to have made a decision based on process. And, Kyle Smith has a very stated process that I can get behind. And kind of like you said, when you can latch on to something stylistically, that makes it a lot more interesting to watch and a lot more interesting to write about. It's kind of like what we did with Mike Leach, right? Like the air raid is a very defined, very easy is maybe not the right word, but if you know what you're looking for, you can see it. Right. And so, that does make it to some degree a little more, a little easier to write about. And I think Kyle Smith could be like that, now that we can say, okay, this is what we do. And it's the same thing with the Bennetts. There became an identity there where people came to the games knowing, hey, we're going to play lockdown defense. I mean, Craig, you were in the house for a lot of those games. I mean, Kyle and I are a little older, but you were in the house for a lot of those games where, there was almost nothing as loud as when the defense would get the shot clock down to the last, 5, 6, 7 seconds, and the place just starts going bananas, right? Because the other team can't even figure out how to get off a shot. You give fans something to latch onto, and they'll latch onto it if you have some success.
I will say this: I've been to a handful of the arenas in the Big Ten. I've been to Kentucky. I've been to where else have I been? I've been to South Carolina. I've never seen anything like those 2 years that Tony was really good, the WSU student section. I've never seen anything that intimidating in any arena I've ever been to. And so, I mean, I mean that sincerely. I don't mean that because it's a team that I root for. I mean, there's something to be said about 5,000 students standing right on top of you. And so if you can recreate that, which, I mean, you've only been able to do once or twice, it's something special that can absolutely work in your favor. I mean, like you said, I mean, I went to school in the Paul Graham era. I'm pretty sure I went to maybe 3 games in the 4 years I was there. So I did not fall in love with Cougar basketball when I was in school. I fell in love with it watching how the students reacted in those few Tony years, and I think that's what Chun kind of pig lip service to that too, is that right now there's no students that really care about Cougar basketball, and they're going to graduate without caring about caring about Cougar basketball if they don't do something about that. So I think that this might be a very fun experiment to see if they can. I don't even think you need to be a top 15 team to recreate what they did. It's just if you can convince 5,000 students to show up, you're gonna make a very scary. You're going to make for a very scary arena.
Yeah, and obviously I was there. My senior year was Tony's first year, and then my second senior year when I was student teaching was my. So I still had a student pass. So I went to a few games, but not a lot. But it was just. So I remember my sophomore year they started the Zoo Crew, and I was like, this is so like I signed up for it, but I was like, this is so stupid. Like, there's no one in this arena. No one's gonna care. Like no one's gonna sign up for this. Like, this is kind of silly. I signed up because like you could win prizes for going to the games, and I won a fucking trip to the Pac-10 tournament, so that was pretty great. Which I guess I could talk about, but it was pretty awesome. There was 17 of us that qualified. You had to go to a certain number of games. You had to go to a certain number of women's games as well. So I would, on my work breaks, run to the stadium and scan my card and then go back to work so I could get the points. But yeah, so I
suppose the statute of limitations have expired since you were in college. So.
Yeah. You can't take the trip away from me. Yeah. I already went on it.
Suck it, nerds.
Suck it, nerds. But yeah, but I remember my sophomore year is when they started the Zoo Crew, and it was Bennett's second year, or Dick Bennett's second year, and it was just like no one gives a fuck about basketball here. Like, my freshman year was when they blew that lead late to Stanford, and that definitely wasn't a 5-second violation, so fuck you, ref. But anyway, I wrote I hate Stanford after that game on my for some reason in the dorms you have little whiteboards on the wall for people to leave you messages, I guess. I wrote it on there and it just stayed on there. The rest is like I had that whiteboard for years and I just left I hate Stanford on there for years. But yeah, there was a good crowd for that. I remember that being actually difficult. Like you had to if you didn't get there like early, you had to like sit off to the side or whatever. And but by the time my senior year, Gonzaga was the first sellout, and it was like 3,000 Zag fans and 7,000 Coug fans or whatever. But it was like one of the coolest atmospheres I've ever been in because like all the Zag fans and all the Coug fans who are probably secretly Zag fans and like we're just like oh my God, we're gonna beat Gonzaga. This is crazy because I love Gonzaga. But so that was one of the best atmospheres. And then the UW game that year, they actually had to they turned like thousands of students away. So many students wanted to get into that game. And it was just a crazy atmosphere. And so that's definitely like, it doesn't take it. That was halfway through a good season. It doesn't take that much, like, because that was in January. So WSU at that point was, doing well, but it was only midway through the season, and there was no guarantee of them actually being good. Like I think with WSU in any program, you're always like, this could all fall apart at any moment. But man, it was just crazy. By my senior year at the UCLA game, we camped out overnight, like to go to a basketball game on a Thursday. And that was so crazy. And like, so like I remember playing modded, we played for any of my friends that may be listening that were in that, or anybody that was in this line, someone had an N64 and it was modded to play Sports Jeopardy from the Super Nintendo. So we played like Sports Jeopardy for hours in line. Like, it was crazy. Like, people would line up for basketball games overnight. Like, could you, like, now this year I could imagine you could show up 5 minutes after tip off and have a front row seat. Like, it's, so if there's any modicum of success.
Sounds like college.
Yeah. If there's any motive. Yes, that emulates the experience for any other part of college as well. But yeah, if there's any success at all, like, the students will come, and that's obviously doesn't drive revenue, but it makes it fun. Like, even when you're watching it on TV, you notice this year that like the students didn't give a fuck, and they kind of gave a fuck at that UW game, and we're like, this kind of seems a little better.
Yeah, because they won a couple games in a row, and then UW came to town and we got smashed.
It literally took 2 wins for students, and then UW being there for the students to give a shit. So in basketball, like, you can swing the pendulum pretty quickly.
I would say that students do swing the pendulum, or they do drive revenue eventually. Because I mean, I remember going to games in the Bone era, like I think during that clay season. Where we went to the NIT. I went there specifically because I wanted to see what the students were doing. And I remember going to 3 or 4 games just because I remember watching them on television. And I remember the arena being pretty loud despite there not being a whole lot of people in the high dollar seats. So I was trying to figure out how many people were actually in the arena. And so I think there are, I do think when you have a loud arena on television, that it does make people want to be a part of that. And it's infectious. I think if he can win the students, so if Kyle Smith can win the students over quickly, I think that this could get fun very quickly. We might not be good quickly, but we might be fun quickly.
Yeah, and I think it also, there's a point of if you get them when they're students, there's a lot of people from my age that are probably super stoked right now, and those people that'll be like, we have to hire a Ben Johnson or Rick Sanchez or whatever, or Ron Sanchez, sorry, not Rick Sanchez. That's Rick and Morty.
Well, what's Rick Sanchez doing? Let's give him a call.
Maybe. Does he have any
Kyle,
to Australia?
Kyle, where the fuck was Chun? Why didn't you look at Hambone, man?
I know that would have been great if we had hired a Hambone. Like, we could have gotten a e-cigarette deal, or what do they call vaping? Be vaping on the sideline. Giant mustache. Mustaches are huge in Pullman right now, I've heard.
Listeners to the podcast who don't know what they're talking about, just do a quick Google search of Coug Center Hambone. You'll find it.
It's not worth it.
It's not even worth 10
but also
seconds.
It's the peak of both Sherwood and mine's careers at Coug Center.
Yeah, so. It was definitely downhill from there. Although did all the What the Hell is a series that came after that, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely the peak.
Well, that's why they kept losing, Kyle.
That's right.
You guys made those. How dare you make fun of the other team?
We definitely took shit for that, just like we took shit about making fun of the Ernie hire. But who was right about that, bitches?
We were right.
It's all right. The Coug Center Twitter account is taking shit because because we don't like Gonzaga. I'm sorry if you like a team and someone else doesn't like them. I know it's really hard for you to deal with.
It's a hard concept.
Like, it's a really hard concept. I know. It's just rough that not everyone likes the thing that you like, but fuck Gonzaga. And hopefully, hopefully Kyle Smith makes WSU good enough that Mark Few will want to play us, and then we'll be like, no.
No, I want to beat their
We need
asses.
better teams.
That's what I want.
No, actually, yeah. But yeah, that would be great to play them again and beat them. Those were actually really fun too. Those like few years that the games were close and relevant. That was a fun rivalry, and I just want fun basketball again. And I hope, honestly, it'll be fun for me just knowing that there's a nerd on the sideline. And like, so let me read this quote that Michael Preston used in an article. He quoted it from the Athletic article. Randy Bennett and Kyle Smith. This is when Smith was at St. Mary's with Randy Bennett. Formulated their own system, which Bennett took to St. Mary's in 2001, with Smith as his top lieutenant, inheriting the no-name program off a 2-27 season. Can you imagine St. Mary's going 2-27? That's so crazy. Like, thinking of what they are now. They felt free to experiment. They drank Ken Pomeroy's sight from a fire hose. They dog-eared pages of Moneyball. Like, that's fucking cool, man. Drank Ken Pomeroy's sight from a fire hose.
Yeah.
Like,
this is our guy. Are we the unofficial presidents of the Kyle Smith fan club now?
Yes. And what do you think that Ernie Kent drank from a fire hose?
Oh, God. I don't know. Kyle, you're the jokes. What did Ernie Kent drink? We lost Kyle.
No comment.
I
think is the thing on there. Yeah, we lost Kyle. Yeah, he's on here, but
no, we lost him. He's gone.
Oh, he's gone.
He's like, screw you guys. I'm not telling any more jokes. It's time to end this thing.
He might come back. I honestly don't. Oh, there he's back.
There's Kyle.
Yeah.
This is a high quality podcast.
So Jeff and I spent money on nice microphones, but you just can't. You can't beat the quality of Microsoft Skype product. Yeah, so Kyle's gonna fuck with his audio here to get it working again. But let's see, where are we at? I don't know how much time's left because we were talking so long before the podcast started.
It's probably time to wrap it up.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, this was just about the coach. It's fine. That's all you wanted.
We'll talk about other things another time.
We'll talk about other things next week. I don't know.
I mean, maybe we spared everybody from talking about the Mueller report. We could have done that.
Yeah, we were probably going to do that, but then stuff happened, so we'll probably not ever talk about it. So, sorry.
We'll probably talk about it.
Okay, fine. We'll talk about it.
I don't think it's going away anytime soon.
But anyways, so just a teaser, a little teaser. I don't want to give anything away because we probably shouldn't yet. But just if you're heading to Pullman for the spring game, keep your morning open. Keep around 10 a.m. open.
Yeah.
Keep around 10 a.m. open. Hopefully by next week we'll have an announcement to make. But it's going to be awesome. It's going to be something I didn't even imagine doing when we started this. But yeah, keep 10 a.m. open on Saturday at the spring game. You won't regret it, or maybe you will.
Well, you might regret it, but
you probably will regret it.
You'll probably regret it.
Yeah. There's probably going to be beer involved, so you probably won't regret it.
There will definitely be beer involved.
But please, if you like this, please go to and give us a 5-star rating on whatever thing that you listen to it on. If you have any questions, comments, whatever, send them to us at podcast versus everyone @gmail.com. I see Kyle. We see Kyle's face.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
There we go.
Yeah. So I'm
he's
having
got-
with my desktop, so I have to
he's
log
got-
in with my phone.
he's got AirPods in, so he's looking really
AirPods
cool.
in.
Yeah.
Man, we are on it.
I bought that with all my Coug Center money.
That's why I'm laughing, because there's no way you did that.
The yacht was cheaper than the AirPods.
I know.
Might have been.
But yeah, listen to Kyle's other podcasts when football season comes.
Yeah, Cougar Football Saturdaycast.
If we ever get around to it. Yeah, we don't really get into the intricacies of Mike Leach football as much as we talk about beer and farting and tailgating. But it's a fun listen.
And cereal. I do distinctly remember the one episode about cereal.
Yeah, we talk about cereal mascots a lot. We really like to figure out who would win in fights between like Count Chocula and Boo Berry and guys like that. So
don't pretend that's not a worthy endeavor.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, so me and Blackie and Gabe and Jeff, we have a great time. So please download the Cougar Football Saturdaycast. We'll likely have something up for spring ball that will have nothing to do with spring ball. It'll be fun.
Spring ball is stupid. It doesn't matter. But yeah, it takes a long time to drive to Pullman. That's why it doesn't, like, the more WSU podcasts, the better.
It's like a golden age of WSU podcasts right now.
I mean, we'll all probably get bored and quit all at the same time, so it'll be fun.
That might be true.
Yeah.
We'll just as each are dying, we'll be guest hosts on each of the podcasts.
Yeah, we're all just being slowly pulled into to Preston's universe here eventually. So he's just gonna all make us part of his network.
Eventually, the Coug Center Hour is 14 people.
Yeah. Just the world's most disgusting conference call.
It's basically like the CBS the CBS NFL morning show, but in podcast form, so way worse. Who the fuck is talking?
A hard stop here at 1:30. So if we could wrap up the podcast.
There we go.
I think it's good. Yeah, I already told you.
That was a joke. I didn't say we'd have to wrap.
No, dude, we were wrapping it up while you were.
No, it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah. So just follow us, like us, do all that fun stuff. We tweet us at Pod versus Everyone. Tweet Kyle at Big Wood WSU. That's what yours is, right?
I'm at both Big Wood WSU. Send all complaints to Coach Grinch OSU.
Yes. That's Kyle's burner account.
That's my burner account. Please direct all complaints there.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening. Kyle, thank you.
Yeah.
Joining our podcast.
It's been a pleasure, guys. Am I the first guest?
You are.
Oh man,
they will never take that away from you.
That is depressing for you guys, but
and we will never live it down.
But I'm honored for it, so I'm glad I could be here for all the shit that just went down.
All right, well we can all the three of us, or actually Kyle, are you making it over to Pullman for the spring game or no?
We're gonna try. Work is a bitch right now, so we'll figure it out.
Well, hopefully we'll all be there to celebrate this basketball hire in Pullman, and if not, we'll celebrate in September. So thanks everyone for listening. Thanks again to Kyle Sherwood for joining us. Thanks Jeff, and goodbye.
Goodbye. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.